Welcome back. Public health is an always changing picture of what's happening in our communities, and this morning we're going to discuss a topic that is growing in recognition and importance, and there are specific and important reasons for that, and it is certainly a topic that applies very much to our young people, not only in our community but right across the entire United States. I'm pleased to be joined by Alyssa Mitchell. She is from the Summit County Health Department, and this morning we are going to talk about all things vaping. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So, e-cigs, vaping,
Yes.
the terminology list goes on and on.
It does, and youth, every time I go into a presentation with youth, I hear a new term every single time, but when you talk about e-cigs, vaping, PV, mods, it's all referring to the same act, the same basic type of products, which are these e-cigarettes. And instead of using like traditional tobacco, instead of burning something, their battery and atomizer are heating up a liquid, and then the vapor is what people are breathing in. So it's actually supposed to give a similar sensation to smoking, but it's just doing it a different way.
And I know that I'm probably going to jump ahead, but it's something that I've kind of keyed in on, and that is with respect to ingredients. And like I say, we'll talk more about the kind of the entire environmental, psychological components of this, but propylene glycol. Propylene glycol, everybody, not...
So propylene glycol, if you were to research it on the internet, it would say it is a FDA approved product to be used in food processing. And that's really misleading to youth and even adults who are vaping it. What most people don't realize is that propylene glycol is used for much more than just vaping. They actually put it in fog machines to help create that effect. A lot of haunted houses, they use it in paints and plastics for the color.
Antifreeze, propylene glycol.
Yes, and
crazy.
When people breathe it in, it's actually a known lung irritant, and it can trigger asthma reactions in pretty much anybody. So when people breathe it in, generally it's going to irritate the lungs and your nose, and you will be coughing quite a bit more than you normally would. And there's lots of other chemicals in e-cigarettes that are also potentially dangerous. The flavorings, when you hear flavorings, you think, okay, well, candy's got flavorings, there's flavorings added to a lot of processed food. A lot of these flavorings have been approved for in small amounts for ingestion. Our lungs are much more fragile, and many of these flavorings actually can have other effects to them. For example, one that's not on this picture, but it's called diacetyl. It causes what is called popcorn lungs. So an entire factory of popcorn people working in a processing factory were breathing in just the different chemicals that go into the butter, and diacetyl actually triggered lung cancer, little tumors to appear on their lungs. So when something we say is food grade, it's approved in small amounts to be ingested. It's not approved to breathe in through the lungs. Other chemicals that are found, nicotine is actually in most e-juices. It's a known carcinogen, and it's actually potentially fatal, especially in the liquid form. We've actually had an increase in poison control calls. In 2014, there was about 204 calls a month in regards to nicotine poisoning, when in 2010 there was maybe one a month. And it's actually children under the age of 4 getting into these candy flavored juices and either ingesting it or spilling it on their hands, because the nicotine's absorbed immediately into the skin. You can't just wash it off, unfortunately.
Wow.
So, and you know, when kids see these flavors, it makes it not seem as bad. They think it's candy, and when you vape it, it smells good. So even youth are misled by these fun, colorful, good-smelling vapors, thinking that these are safer products because they don't look like the traditional or smell like the traditional tobacco products.
And these photographs of the dispensers that we saw, you know, they look like candy. Obviously, there are colors added to these so that the strawberry looks like a strawberry Slurpee or something like that. It's really insidious.
And at this point, there's no regulation about flavorings or labeling with the e-juice bottles. In 2019, that'll change a little bit. The e-juice manufacturers will have to be more accurate with their labeling and be within a 10% error range of how much of these chemicals are in their e-juice. But we're still finding, especially in the school systems, youth are purchasing these e-juices online. And I really saw bottles that had no label on it. And as a parent, you wouldn't know what that is. You would look and see this bottle of colorful liquid and it's, you know, what is this?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what we're really focusing on right now is parent and youth education on what chemicals are found in these products and especially what the devices themselves look like, because the devices themselves can actually be very discreet. Like up on the screen here, some of them are very thin, some of them are very large and bulky, and especially with these new jewels that are coming out, some are small and look exactly like flash drives. And so it's really discreet and easy for youth to hide that. And actually we've had issues in some of the school districts about youth actually vaping these in class, because all it looks like is that they're putting just a flash drive in their mouth. And I mean, it's not that uncommon to put a pen or a pencil or something like that in your mouth when you're thinking. And so really it's just amazing the ways you can be discreet about vaping. Now
they've got hoodie strings with vape attachments.
Yep, all they have to do is put the mod inside, or the mod itself is inside the string, and I'm not sure entirely where the refill cartridge is, but all they have to do is put that little hoodie string up to their mouth and inhale the vapor and breathe it, and they can breathe it out like that individual is, or some people will even be discreet and have the vapors come out in their sleeves so that you can't see the vapor, which is particularly common, especially on the west, the Salt Lake Valley and along the Wasatch Front areas. We haven't heard about the vapeware so much in Summit County yet.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, all of this to me really seems like it's so very tied into young person's desire to rebel, to do something that's not approved. And so at that point it becomes, with the known dangers of this process, that it's so important, like as you were saying, the education process, so that parents, so that folks in high schools, I'm sure in high schools they are all over this now already, but parents especially. Yes,
and we are partnering with the Sheriff's Office for their Frontline Blue Line events that they've been doing around the county. There's actually one coming up on February 5th in Camas. We go and attend these parent nights that they have, and we provide the education about these mods and the juices at this event. And the Sheriff's Office has a lot of information about how youth are disguising these products and have a lot of great information for parents. The event they did in Colville actually reached probably about 400 parents, many of which were just in shock of what they didn't know was out there. So we're focusing on that. We also have presentations coming up at North Summit High School and Treasure Mountain Junior High to educate the youth themselves and the staff about these products, what to look for and what the chemicals are found inside. And we also look at it too from an industry point of view, especially with the youth, how media advertisements target them, how flavorings target them specifically to make these products look less harmful or make them look cool, or even as a mechanism for stress release, which is unfortunate because there's much better ways to reduce stress than vaping or smoking.
And looking at these bottles, I mean, there's a little cartoon elephant on there.
Yes.
And with the coloring, it's all put together to appeal to kids.
It is.
Clearly.
And what I try to tell my youth is that a 50-year-old who's been smoking for 20+ years does not care if he is smoking or vaping a cotton candy flavored juice, or if it's got a cute little picture on it, or the terminology that's used. This is specifically targeting young adults and youth. And so that's the big thing we're trying to push with parents, is educate yourself. This is how they're targeting your youth, and have these conversations with the youth about the potential dangers for these products.
I'm sure that there's probably a lot of crossover between big tobacco and manufacturers that are trying to save their dollar essentially by appealing in this kind of way.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up. A lot of the big traditional tobacco companies are actually buying out these smaller vaping companies and are increasing their product variation. So a lot of the tobacco companies want youth to start vaping, want to have these products because that's where the money is now. It's just the new it's the new trend, unfortunately.
And these change in time so very quickly of this thing didn't exist. I'm sure that it's a challenge for you as a public health officer when things are changing so very quickly. Yes,
I'm actually just a health educator, but it's hard. This has really only been in the U.S. for about 10 years, and unfortunately we're playing catch up with trying to figure out trying to combat the way they're advertising this, and really the misconceptions that were first advertised with these products, and that are still being disseminated by the industry itself. Youth will say, well, I read this article that these have less chemicals, that these aren't as dangerous. But when you look at who's actually putting out these studies, a lot of the time it's actually the vaping industry or people buying into the vaping industry. So really, you got to look at who's providing these studies. And honestly, we at the health department rely on the long, extensive studying from the Centers for Disease Control and the Food and Drug Administration. And at this point, what they have said is that these are considered tobacco-like products, and the risk is still there. The potential long-term cancer risk is still there. Now, studies will keep happening because, as you know, traditional tobacco products have been studied for decades, and we're still playing catch-up.
Yes.
It's really awful with these mods because you can actually adjust the cloud size, so you can inhale more vape or less vape, depending on how you adjust it. So it's been really hard trying to study what the long-term effects are, but we do know the short-term effects, which is asthmatic reactions, and especially for people who breathe in the secondhand vape, it can trigger asthmatic reactions through them. We see an increase in lung conditions, so bronchitis, and also people just get nauseated. The amount of nicotine, people vape longer, so the amount of nicotine people are vaping in can sometimes be more than a cigarette, so people get nauseous vaping for a long time.
It's just crazy. Yeah. Hey, let's tell people where to go to get more information, and also to double check on those dates for the upcoming presentations that you all have.
Sure. So as far as for more information, we're updating our website right now with even more in-depth information about these products. So go to summitcountyhealth.org. They can also go to the Centers for Disease Control or the Food and Drug Administration websites, because they've got some great information there about these products. As far as the Frontline Blue Line event, I believe we have it advertised on our website as well. It is in Camas. It starts at 6 o'clock at South Summit High School. And if anyone has questions, they can actually call the Summit County Sheriff's Office, because they're the ones hosting the event.
Fantastic. Alyssa, thank you so much. This is important stuff to be talking about, and change is happening around us, and we have to do everything we can to keep our kids healthy.
Thank you so much for having us today.
Absolutely. Great to meet you.
Great to meet you.
SummitCountyHealth.org. Get more information on the events that are coming up, and go to the CDC and get more information about these new products that, although they may be marketed in a way that looks fun and flavorful, are anything but. We'll be right back after this.